giving you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show, live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
It is time for a do-over in North Carolina's 9th Congressional District. Massive election fraud. Cancel that election and just schedule a whole new one right from the start. Hey, what do you say, everybody? Boy, can you believe it? It's a Friday, December 7, Pearl Harbor Day, here on The Bill Press Show, coming to you live from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Lots going on today with the House finally deciding they were going to punt. That's what they always do when they have any question that they've got to decide. Why make a decision if we can put it off for a couple of weeks or maybe a month or maybe 6 months? They've put off a decision on funding Donald Trump's border wall. It ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen, but they're going to fight it out starting December 21st. Yes, right before Christmas. Merry Christmas. Donald Trump taking off for Kansas City today on another BS trip just to get him out of the White House, which the staff likes to do. Maybe get him away from his iPhone long enough to give us a little rest, because he's been tweeting into the early hours of the morning and starting again in the early hours of the morning. Okay, enough already. And indeed, some news about undocumented workers invading the country and taking jobs from Americans at Donald Trump's golf courses. Hey, Donald, what's up with that? Here we go. Lots to talk about. You send us your comments on the news of the day as we get into it on Twitter at BP Show, But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
All righty, just a couple of other stories making news. A scary day yesterday at Burbank's Airport. So they got a little rain yesterday.
Oh boy, did they ever.
Over the course of 6 hours, they received 1.66 inches of rain, which is a hell of a lot of rain for that area. Their monthly average is 2.4 inches. So when it rains, of course, airplanes have a hard time landing, which is exactly what happened to one Southwest flight that was flying from Oakland. It skidded on the runway, and here's one woman who was a passenger on the plane that describes what happened.
The pilot came on the radio and said, hey, I just want to let you guys know that the runway at Burbank's kind of short, it's rainy, and so I'm going to brake hard.
They did brake hard, and in fact, there is a at the end of the runway is I'm sure you know this very well, Bill.
Yeah, they have this sort of sand trap.
Yeah, well, so it's there's sand, and it's also concrete blocks that are meant to collapse under the weight of a plane. So that essentially stopped them. Just on the other side of this system was a highway.
Right. For 7 years, I commuted twice a week from Oakland to Burbank, to Oakland.
Oh, so you know this
I
well.
know that airport.
Did you ever have to slam into those things?
No, but I knew everybody in that airport. I mean, the security people knew me. Because that was my home.
Yeah.
Everybody's. It's an old Hughes Hughes manufacturing. They used to make warplanes there.
Okay.
So it's a small airport and a short runway.
They really emphasized how short the runway is, and also, by the way, every passenger on the flight got a free ticket and additional compensation, although that was not.
And a free bag of peanuts.
And a free bag of peanuts. Hey, the Oscars are coming up, Bill, and they have a host, Kevin Hart. Comedian Kevin Hart was named as the host of the Oscars. Well, that was until yesterday. Some of his homophobic tweets resurfaced. These tweets were done back in 2009 and 2011. Lots of derogatory language referring to gay people. Made some very disparaging comments about homosexuality. He has since deleted the tweets, but it's too late. Once you put it out there, people see them. They're there forever.
Can you imagine if he walked out on that stage?
In Hollywood.
In Hollywood?
After those tweets.
Yeah.
No, that would be a bad idea.
Roundly booed, chased off the stage.
Late yesterday, he said, quote, I have made the choice to step down from hosting this year's Oscars.
So, the fact that they named him is insane.
You'd think they'd, have seen him.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Yes, in this country, we are not allowed to hire undocumented workers unless I hire them myself. That's what Donald Trump says this morning. At least that's what he should say. Hey, hello, everybody. Nice to see you today. On a Friday, a rare Friday appearance for me on this Friday, December 7th. I don't know why the hell I'm here, but
who am I? Why am I
here? Right? What happened? Who talked me into coming in this morning? But it is so great to see you. It's so great to be here with you. Wink, wink. On a Friday, we do have lots to talk about, so at least that's going to keep us busy here on this Friday, December 7th. The Bill Press Show. Coming to you live coast to coast from our studio in Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., as always, and joining you, as always, in every little corner of this United States of America, and indeed around the globe, as we join you online on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. And one more reminder about our podcast. We want to get those numbers up to record numbers, and is growing every day. Tell your friends, check it out. Podcast, BillPressShow.com. Check out the podcast or go to iHeartRadio wherever you follow your podcast. We're there. And don't forget to sign up so you are a regular of the Bill Press team, and you will get all the extra stuff that we put up there as well during the day and over the weekends. Of course, we're with you on television, on the one and only Free Speech TV, and on the radio statewide in Indiana and out in the Chicago area, the city of Chicago, and roundabout Chicago on WCPT, the big progressive voice of Chicago. Hello, 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 as we go into the weekend. Not yet. We got a couple of hours before we release you into the weekend. Some winter weather expected to slam into the southern United States. They seem to be the ones. Something's weird here. All the snow is happening in the south. Very little snow up in the north. Maybe a little bit this weekend coming up, but it's going to hit the south first. So it's sort of.
I wonder why that could be, Bill. You just have to wonder what's going on with the weather.
Well, if it's snow, it can't be global warming.
That's right. That's right.
We know that. But let's see. Where do we start today? Well, first we start by inviting your comments on Twitter, as always, at BP Show, at BP Show. I guess I want to start by introducing you to Victorina Morales. Victorina Morales. She is a fine person here. She's got a very important job up in Bedminster, New Jersey, at the Donald Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey. She is the one, when Donald Trump goes up there, she makes Donald Trump's bed. She cleans his toilet. She dusts his crystal golf trophies. And when he is there, she wears a Secret Service pin. So she can go, of course, in and out of the apartment anytime she wants. So she is basically Donald Trump's maid when he is at Bedminster, New Jersey. She's been there for 5 years, since 2013. And she knows the president, and he knows her, and it's all very fine. She has an interesting story, Victorina Morales, which she has now told to, she was on, I saw her on CBS News, NBC News, and she's on the front page of the New York Times this morning because she came to this country in 1999, crossing the border illegally. In other words, she is an undocumented worker. They knew it at Bedminster, she says. They helped her get phony work documents at Bedminster, and she says she is hardly the only one, that there are as many as a dozen at Bedminster, New Jersey alone. We don't know what the story is in Sterling, Virginia, for example. We don't know what the story is at Mar-a-Lago or any of his other properties. A little embarrassing. And Victorina Morales said the reason she decided to come forward and tell her story, she tells the New York Times, quote, "We are tired of the abuse, the insults, the way he talks about us when he knows that we are here helping him make money." Busted, Donald. It's interesting. He's been tweeting, as we said, all last night, and he's been tweeting early this morning. I haven't seen any tweets at all about Victorina Morales. By the way, this is like, in a sense, nothing new. I mean, almost every time you see these highfalutin Republicans get on their high horse and slam and attack what they call illegal immigrants, right? Undocumented workers. You poke a little bit. If they've got a business, they're hiring them to do their lawn, make their beds, wash their dishes, cook their meals, or whatever. They're all hypocrites. Every single one.
Every single one.
Yeah. I mean, you just go down the list, right?
And by the way, it's not just businesses. It's a lot of these Trump voters who
you bet
happily vote for these policies to keep immigrants out of this country. And then when they need some help, they're going to find day laborers that are a lot of the times undocumented workers.
Totally. And you see these spots down to Home Depot or whatever.
Yeah.
They're gathering spots where they know they need somebody to put up some drywall, or they need somebody to tear something down, or whatever, right? That's what they do. Yeah. And they just look the other way for 5 minutes or 5 hours while they hire their own undocumented workers, pay them dirt, and then go out and vote for policies that are going to deport all of these people out of the country. So just want to point out, we all knew Donald Trump was a hypocrite. Just more proof of it this morning. Meanwhile, the big political news has to be what's happening down in North Carolina. This is really stunning. North Carolina's 9th Congressional District. And again, this is against the backdrop of Donald Trump before the election in 2016, and ever since, one of his primary themes is voter fraud, voter fraud. Everything is rigged. It's a rigged system. It's rigged against me. There's not been one case. Remember accusing Hillary Clinton, 5 million people voted for her illegally. Otherwise, he would have won the popular vote. Accusing them of running busloads of voters from Massachusetts into New Hampshire. It goes on and on. All these lies, not one single case of voter fraud. And, of course, all of that was echoed by Chris Kobach, his stooge that he appointed head of this voter fraud commission, which was such a failure where they couldn't find any evidence of voter fraud at all, that they shut the damn thing down. And then Chris Kobach got defeated running for governor of Kansas. So some good things happened this year. At any rate, despite all of that, we now have one case, not of voter fraud, but election fraud. No doubt about it. And where is it? It's not in a Democratic operation. It's a Republican operation in North Carolina, of all places. And what happened is this Mark Harris, Republican candidate, first of all, in the primary, he knocks off an incumbent Republican member of Congress. He challenged him, a Tea Partier, if you will, or a Trumper from the right, challenged this Robert Pittenger, said he wasn't conservative enough, and he beat him in the primary. And in the primary, when he lost, Robert Pittenger said, I think the reason I lost was because of ballot stuffing. He accused, at the time, Mark Harris, his opponent, of hiring somebody to do some ballot stuffing. Nobody paid any attention to it at the time. Certainly, the Republican Party, this is the Republican primary, remind you, the Republican Party did nothing about it. Nobody. They looked the other way. They said Pittenger was just being a sore loser. Boom, boom, boom. Now, then the general election comes along, and it's Mark Harris versus Democrat Dan McCready. On election night, it looked like Harris had won by about 900 points. McCready actually conceded. Well, then it turns out that Mark Harris hired the same guy that he hired, a guy named McCrae Dallas. He hired the same guy as a consultant to do some get-out-the-vote operation. In other words, to do some more ballot stuffing. This McCrae Dallas is a well-known character in North Carolina. In fact, in 2016, he was accused of, election fraud. Oh, yes. So he's done this before. He did it in the primary. Mark Harris hires him to do the same kind of ballot stuffing in the general. And what he was doing was going around knocking door to door, as in most states, if you have a mail-in ballot, like I always vote by mail in California, you have a mail-in ballot, you have to mail it yourself, or you can have somebody turn it in for you, but it has to be your legal guardian, or like if you're incapacitated and can't get out of the house, your spouse or somebody, you have to designate somebody. So what these guys would do is they would go door to door and say, hey, were you going to mail in your ballot? Well, I'll do it. I'll deliver it for you. And, of course, there are
Isn't that nice?
enough dummies out there. We'll give it to them unsealed. Some of them haven't even filled them out yet. And so Dallas's people would fill all these out, turn them in to show you how dumb ass he was. The ballots from this one county came in that were turned in a Democratic part of the district, Congressional 9th District. 96% of the ballots turned in were for the Republican. 96%. Nobody gets, 96% of the absentee ballots. It's so they got him. They got him cold. And the evidence is right there. So much so that the North Carolina state election officials will still today not certify that election.
It's all election fraud is bad, obviously, right? But like the way that this was done in such a coordinated way, in such a blatant way, as you just pointed out, is disgusting.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
And how bad it is, it's so bad that the executive director of the North Carolina Republican Party, Mr. Dallas Woodhouse, whose brother, Brad Woodhouse, is former communications director for the Democratic National Committee, and our friend who will be in studio with us about 15 minutes from now, his brother, Dallas Woodhouse, yesterday said he saw the report on CNN about this, and it upset him so much that he threw up. And then he came out and said he would support a brand new election in North Carolina. He thinks they ought to have a hearing first, but he said if the evidence is what they showed on CNN, if the evidence is as bad as they say it is, they ought to start from scratch, have a brand new election. I don't think there's any other option.
No.
I mean, you got to go back to the primary, redo the primary,
yeah,
and then redo the general.
Yeah.
And however it breaks, that's the way it breaks. And the other thing is Nancy Pelosi's and Sherry Bustos, who's head of now our good friend from Illinois, Congresswoman Sherry Bustos, head of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, both she and the speaker-to-be, Nancy Pelosi, have said they're not going to seat this guy.
Good.
Yeah, and they shouldn't. It's clearly fraudulent election. But again, I find it somewhat delicious that after all the talk about voter fraud or election fraud, this is the only case of election fraud we've seen in 3 years, and it's a Republican candidate in North Carolina.
Look, you take a look at our voting system.
By the way, can I just add one thing? Donald Trump has not said one single word about this.
I wouldn't hold your breath.
Not one word.
Waiting for him to say something.
Finally, we have evidence of election fraud. Not one word.
Right. Right. I mean, you have to look at our voting system. You have to look at what happened with the general election in 2016. You have to look at Russia and the role that they played and the role that the Donald Trump administration played in getting them to the table to have an opportunity to do something like that. You look at what's happening in North Carolina. You look at what happened in Georgia with Stacey Abrams. You take a look around the country at what Republicans are doing to the voting process here in America.
Yeah.
And they're just completely ruining the free, fair, independent elections that we hold so dearly.
They're doing everything they can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's in every single case, it's Republican.
While this
every single case.
While this election fraud is taking place, yeah, you've got all these efforts, which we've talked about so often here, of on the show, of attorney generals or state secretaries of state in the red states trying to make it more difficult for people to vote and to really suppress the vote. So we'll see what happens in North Carolina. It'll be interesting to get Brad Woodhouse's comments about his baby brother when he steps up. Other news. Yes, indeed. Donald Trump has another Foxer. Big appointment here. Where does he go when he wants to make a big appointment? He goes to cable news. That's where we got Larry Kudlow, right? And so many other people in the Trump administration. The latest is, I think Nauert is how you pronounce her name, Heather Nauert, who is the press secretary at the State Department. So we know that Nikki Haley has stepped down as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Donald Trump looking for her successor. Heather Nauert was co-host of Fox and Friends, Donald Trump's favorite TV show. She's been over to the State Department since she moved from being a co-host at Fox, an anchor at Fox, to the press secretary at the State Department. So she has zero government experience, zero foreign policy experience, other than reading press releases and handling briefings, rare briefings, I might add, at the State Department. You know, our friend Josh Lederman, who's now NBC News and was AP at the State Department, told us several times about they have as few briefings at the State Department as they now have at the White House. At any rate, basically the point I'm making is she has zero experience in foreign policy and zero government experience. The White House confirming yesterday that she will be the new U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. The one qualification that she takes to that job is that she's a Trumper, and she's willing to go out there and defend Trump no matter what. But again, that's his. If you want a job in the Trump administration, get a job on Fox News. Remember, who was it last couple of weeks ago, Peter, that they were told the advice that they got to get a job was exactly that? So, Matt Whitaker, the acting attorney general. Right. That's the advice that Jerome Corsi gave Matt Whitaker, and Matt Whitaker did it. And, of course, he is now the acting attorney general of the United States. There you go. Donald Trump's is the pool for possible new employees. Hey, big day today on the Robert Mueller front. Robert Mueller today is scheduled to file his latest report in front of a judge on what should happen with Paul Manafort, who has a sentencing hearing later this month. This is going to be huge. This is going to be very, very significant. Probably like the Michael Flynn filing, a lot of it will be redacted. But putting this in context, there's a lot of things got pretty quiet during the midterms. But since then, it's been almost every other day or every couple of days, boom, 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 the footsteps of Robert Mueller, right? Just in the last week, it started with Robert Mueller saying, hey, Paul Manafort made a deal with us to cooperate and tell the truth. Instead, he's been lying to my investigators, still lying, and the deal is off. So we're going to throw the book at Paul Manafort. At which point, Donald Trump, of course, says, nah, I might help him out with a pardon. Then on top of that, we had Michael Cohen step forward. Michael Cohen cooperating not just with Robert Mueller, but with the New York Attorney General and with the U.S. Attorney in New York. On at least 3 different cases, he is cooperating, and he admits that he lied to Congress about the extent of, he didn't use the word, we can use the word, collusion between Donald Trump and the Russians while Donald Trump was running for president on a new hotel project in Moscow. And the Russians knew Donald Trump was lying about it. And they and Cohen lied to Congress about it. It all came forward, which raises again the question of collusion with the Russians. And Michael Cohen, he's now pledged to fully cooperate with Robert Mueller. And then on top of that, you've got the filing for Michael Flynn the other day, where Robert Mueller said that Flynn has been so helpful, so cooperative. They've learned so much from him that they're going to recommend 0 prison time and that Flynn has helped them with, again, 3 different investigations. So this Mueller thing is bigger than we thought it was. It's not just the investigation, criminal investigation, remember, into whether or not the President of the United States broke the law by colluding with the Russians to undermine the 2016 election and by obstructing justice as part of this investigation, and maybe also by witness tampering. But there are 2 other cases, we don't even know what they are, where Michael Flynn, has also been cooperating with the special counsel. And now on top of that, we will find out what the Robert Mueller has to say about what should be the fate of Paul Manafort now that he has broken his plea deal with the special counsel. So the Mueller investigation is really, really it's full steam ahead right now, and we don't even know what's going to be coming next. Well, we ducked the bullet yesterday, I guess I should put it, with the Dow. Boy, the Dow, which was closed the day before for the funeral service for President George H.W. Bush, it reopened yesterday, and everybody thought, remember, it crashed 799 points in one day, the day on Tuesday. Everybody thought yesterday when it reopened it was going to be another plunge. Fasten your seatbelts, and it was. Went down 761 points, bounced back, thank God, to end up down only 79 points. But what's happening? This, again, is the uncertainty over this trade war with China that Donald Trump launched, said that he fixed down in Argentina, and then when he comes back and brags about what a great deal they made, China says there was no deal whatsoever. China hasn't agreed to anything. Even Larry Kudlow, the president's chief economic advisor, we played those clips over and over. All Larry Kudlow could say is, I think they're going to do this. I expect them to do this. The president assumes they're going to do this. My guess is they're going to do this. That's all the certainty they could give. It wasn't good enough for Wall Street. That's why the Dow plunged. And yesterday it was made even, and then Donald Trump, of course, adds to that by saying, hey, I'm tariff man. I love tariffs. We're going to have even more tariffs. Last thing Wall Street wanted to hear.
He also does not understand how tariffs work.
No.
Like if you read his tweets, he just doesn't understand
He thinks they're one-way streets.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he doesn't get that if we put tariffs on them, they can put tariffs on us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And by the way, very smart tariffs. They target the tariffs to parts of the country that they want to hurt because that's where Trump supporters are. Now, there's one other factor that has influences, which is, and rightly or wrongly, I must say, I don't know all the cases, but while Donald Trump and President Xi are at the table having dinner in Argentina, the Canadian government is arresting a leading Chinese high-tech executive, a woman, don't ask me to pronounce her name, at the request of the United States. They arrest her, and the United States is asking her to be extradited to the United States from Canada to face charges about stealing intellectual property. Again, they may have a case against her, they may not, but the last thing that was needed right now in terms of easing the tension between China and the United States is the arrest of one of their top executives, which, again, I point out, took place at the very time that President Xi and Donald Trump were clinking the champagne glasses, celebrating the truce that they've achieved in Argentina. So somebody got their signals crossed, and China is royally upset at this, what they consider not just an unfair treatment of her, but an insult to China and to the Chinese people. So it's just the administration could not be handling this worse. And again, I think with this, if this uncertainty continues, and a lot of those who watch the market are saying this is going to be a continued slide, could end up in a recession, could end up in the Trump slump. Boy, we're just cracking the surface here. So much to talk about. We want to analyze the midterms and look ahead to 2020 with a good friend, Brad Woodhouse. He comes up next here on the Bill Press Show. A little bit later, Eugene Scott from the Washington Post joins us as a friend of Bill for our second hour together. And then Elaina Plott from The Atlantic just took over as a new White House correspondent for The Atlantic. All the latest in Trump world from Elaina Plott as well. So lots to cover here this Friday. Hang on. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Brad Woodhouse.
Follow us on Twitter at BP Show. This is the Bill Press Show.
And here we go into the weekend, and it is the end of the first week, rather, of the Free Speech TV pledge drive for this winter. And hey, folks, where the hell are you? Come on, wake up and get with it here. We need your help. Things have been pretty slow so far. I know we all tend to do it, put things off, but damn it, now's the time. Get up. Don't go into the weekend without making your contribution to Free Speech TV, because we need your help. You know how it works. Everybody says they bitch about Fox News. They got all these conservatives on Fox News. It's the pro-Trump network. You know, we need something to counter that. We got something to counter that right here on Free Speech TV. That's who we are. The only full-time 24/7 progressive TV channel in the entire country, every day, 24/7. With a great lineup of hosts and a great lineup of guests, and bringing you the news of the day and giving you a chance to talk back about it and express your comments about the news of the day. This is the Progressive Club. This is the resistance, the headquarters of the resistance in the United States. So we got it. We just got to keep it going, but we can't do it without your help. So come on, stop putting it off. Step up to the plate today. Be as generous as you can. We need your help. That's the way Free Speech TV works. I remind you again, without you, we're nothing. Without you, we're not on the air, because there's no government money, no corporate money, no foundation money, no Koch brothers money. It is all of you. So please, let us feel the love here these holidays with your help, either as generously as you can. Every single dollar counts. $20 contribution will send you a little Free Speech TV sticker so you can show you're part of the club. For a $120 contribution, we'll send you a Free Speech TV calendar. You can follow us every day of next year. That's for a $60 pledge, rather. For a $120 pledge, a Free Speech TV T-shirt and that bumper sticker as well. And we love to invite you, if you can make it, $1,000 to Free Speech TV. Invite you to Washington with a friend, so that Carol and I can take you out to dinner at one of our great restaurants on Capitol Hill, and come in the next day and meet the team here. And then you can do the whole business and see all the sites in Washington while you're in town. But the most important thing is, again, end of the first week of the drive. If you haven't already done so, and so many of you haven't, let us hear from you today. Make that call. Make your contribution, your pledge, at 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org/donate, freespeech.org/donate. It's not enough to complain. We got to join together. We got to fight together. We got to gather together every day around Free Speech TV, and we can only do so with your help. Do it now.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Hey, on a Friday, December 7, here we go, the Bill Press Show, live from our nation's capital. And our little perch right here on Capitol Hill, our studio just down the street from the United States Capitol building, where we're brought to you today by the good men and women of the American Federation of Government Employees. Our federal employees at the AFGE, under the leadership of President J. David Cox, keep the federal agencies running day in and day out, doing an excellent job. We depend on them. They never let us down. Check out their website at afge.org. And look who popped in here.
Hey.
Hey.
Good morning.
Campaign director from Protect, not Project.
Our care.
Protect our. This says Project.
Project our care. Well, we can do that too. You know?
Protect our care. Brad Woodhouse. Hey,
good
Brad.
morning. How are you?
It's good to see you. Lots to talk about. We got to find out what's happening with Obamacare with this enrollment period, which a lot of people are keeping a big secret, by the way.
The administration is for sure. Yeah.
But first, check in with Peter here on. We've been at it here, stirring things up a little bit before you arrived.
Yes,
every
indeed.
morning.
Yeah, always. We're on Twitter at BP Show, at BP Show. Lots of different comments on lots of different topics. John Davis says, as far as tariffs, Trump is just plain stupid. That's really all there is to it. It's not some grand plan or anything like that. He's just dumb about it.
Right.
KG says Republican election fraud has been going on for decades. It's only just now being exposed. And also about the Trump worker that you talked about, Joey says Mr. Trump's real Americans hire Americans. Why don't you hire American workers? Because you're a fraud on all of the things that you are.
Here we go. Another reminder about that debate.
We also yesterday
put
drive
underway right now. We didn't mention this, but in addition to these undocumented workers that he has working for him at Bedminster, in Mar-a-Lago, we know that he imports under this was HB1 or H21 or something. A clerk in the immigration law.
Right.
These are people who come in from other countries. They're here under that program legally, but they're not Americans, and they're taking jobs at Mar-a-Lago that Americans aren't.
Americans could have, right? I mean, so he's the biggest.
There's two ways that he's proven such a hypocrite.
He's such a hypocrite. That's too kind of word.
Yesterday, we put up a poll that you could vote on if you're following us on Twitter, at BP Show. Should elected officials take office immediately in order to abolish the lame duck session? This is a conversation that we were having on yesterday's show. You could vote yes or no. I will just say right now, the yes votes greatly outnumber the no votes. But here's a great comment.
Yeah, lame ducks cause a lot of problems.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And give people a lot of opportunities, as we've seen in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Here's a comment from Richard Adloff on that topic. He says, if Americans were sane, the answer would be no. Folks need a little more time to gear up and transfer work from the old office to the new one. Unfortunately,
we're not sane.
Republicans are thugs that use the machinery of governance to dismantle the governance.
Right.
Which I think just about sums it up. Again, if you have a comment on any topic at any time, just go find us on Twitter. We're there for you at BP Show, at BP Show.
All right. Thank you, Peter. So, Brad, I want to talk about Obamacare. But first, I've got to ask you, Brad Woodhouse, what is it like to wake up this morning, or, well, first of all, last night, to turn on the news and see your baby brother on CBS, your baby brother on NBC, and wait a minute, his picture in the New York Times this morning on A18. There he is. There's your baby brother, Dallas Woodhouse in North Carolina.
For the record, you're the better-looking brother.
Well, look, I got to tell you, I have look.
This is all about North Carolina. Here.
I always start any of these questions by saying I love my brother. He's a good man and a good father. But I have had to restrain myself in this North Carolina 9. I mean, he even some of his recent comments where he's now saying, well, if there is fraud, we should have
a new election.
We should have a new election.
Right.
I mean, just a few days ago, he was saying, certify Harris, send him to Congress, then do the investigation. I mean, that's the equivalent of telling the kidnapper to keep the child. I mean, it was outrageous, and it angered me so much because Dallas was, going to the public and doing videos before the election saying, watch out, Democrats are going to commit voter fraud, or watch out, Democrats are going to commit election fraud. And by God, it's them that did it. And then he tried to sweep it under the rug, rush to a judgment. And the truth of the matter is that for all the credit that Dallas might be getting right now by saying, well, if the Board of Elections can prove that there was fraud that may have impacted the election, then they should have a new election. If not for the media that these people like my brother and Donald Trump criticize all the time, that went out and found interview after interview after interview of people who participated. I mean, the news stations in Charlotte have people on camera admitting to felonies. They're admitting to felonies.
Yeah.
They didn't know. They'll say, and their defense will be that they didn't know they had a job. They were being sent out by the campaign.
They say, "Oh, you'll take this in for us? Oh, that's nice of you. Here's my ballot."
Right. Yeah. You know what? We'll fill the rest of it out.
Right.
We'll take care of it. Well, I haven't filled it out yet. We'll take care of it for you. Mm-hmm. And it's just it's outrageous. And I love my brother, but if he could get away with it and get Harris in,
he'd do it.
He'd do it.
You know what? So let's be sure everybody understands. He, your brother, is the executive director of the North Carolina Republican Party. Right. So he's got an official title here, official responsibility.
And look, I'm not saying that Dallas was involved in this or the Republican Party was involved in this.
Yeah.
But they had an inkling.
Right.
They had an inkling, and then they still tried to rush through. Okay, go ahead.
This guy, McCrae Dallas, who's the consultant who was hired.
Funny how his last name and my brother's first name. That's a whole other story. Dallas. Yeah.
But anyhow, so he's got a reputation. First of all, he was accused of voter fraud in 2016.
Right.
And then before, and he's an ex-felon.
He was suspected of this before, and what I can't get to the bottom of, Bill, is what happened with that. That was referred to the State Bureau of Investigation. Why? Yeah. What happened? Apparently, they didn't.
And he's still in business. Despite that, he's still in the business. And Mark Harris hires him in the primary. Against Robert Pittenger, the incumbent Republican. Harris says he's not conservative enough, right? You got to have a Trumper like me,
right?
And when that primary was over, Pittenger told people, "I think there was ballot stuffing going on."
Yeah.
So they had an inkling then. Yeah. What did the Republican Party in North Carolina do at that time?
Swept it under the rug, and I'll tell you why they did. Because McCready, our candidate down there, the Democratic candidate down there, had $1.8 million in the bank. And Harris came out of the election with only a couple $100,000. And, of course, Pittenger came out of the election with virtually no money. He'd spent all his money in the primary, and they wanted to move on to the general election. So they're like telling Robert Pittenger, suck it up, do it for the good of the party. But this election for all was committed against him.
Yeah, committed against him. And then Harris hires the same dude to do the same thing in the general election. I saw one county today, the absentees that Dallas turned in. From a relatively Democratic section of this county, anyhow, came in 96% for the Republican.
Right. I mean, my God, if you're going to do this, Bill, you make it so obvious. I mean, people that dig through this and looked at the numbers, and this is why the State Board of Election didn't certify the race. They're like, well, wait a minute. There's no way that there were this many unreturned ballots of people who had taken them out. And then there's no way there's this disparity in the number that were voted on for Harris versus McCready. I mean, it's against every previous experience. It's against all logic, and so there's going to be a new election there. And I was
going to say, isn't that? Don't you have to have?
They have to have a new election. What I think is, and I hope that this is. I heard Nancy Pelosi say that this is in the North Carolina Board of Elections purview to do, is to start at the very beginning. I mean, Harris is a cheat.
Right.
Harris is a cheat. And the thing that people say is, well, maybe this guy did this without Harris's knowledge. Are you kidding me? People don't do things for candidates that they work for, particularly if they're putting themselves in legal jeopardy, without letting the candidate know.
Of course.
The whole point's to curry favor with the candidate.
And clearly he was happy with his job because he did such a good job in the primary. He said, hey, let's do some more in the general.
One of these people interviewed said that Harris told them, you got to work with this guy on this absentee ballot program. He has a method.
Oh.
He has a method.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
His method was stealing, destroying, stuffing.
His method is ballot harvesting.
Right.
Which is
illegal ballot harvesting. Right. Well, in North Carolina, the minute these workers put their hands on the ballots, they had committed a crime. And then, but then with clearly what they did in ballot stuffing, ballot destruction, it's election fraud,
right?
Plain and simple. And one thing my brother was fact checked on, he said there's not enough votes at stake to flip the election. I mean, there's potentially thousands of votes at stake, and that's what's being investigated right now.
Right. And I was glad to see Nancy Pelosi, Speaker to be, and Sherry Bustos, the new head of the DCCC.
Oh yeah,
both of them saying they're not going to seat this guy.
Right. Well, there's no reason to. I mean, the House of Representatives gets to decide who gets to serve in the House of Representatives, and this person should never be seated.
Okay, so I do have to ask you this question. I'm looking at this picture of your brother. He doesn't have any gray hair at all. So, is he your baby brother here?
He is my younger brother, but the fact that he has no gray hair is up for speculation.
All right.
You and I could have no gray hair if we wanted to.
True, right.
I know a lady right down the street. Yeah,
exactly. All right. There we are. Now, if that goes to, by the way, Dan McCready, let's also add, is a damn good candidate.
Oh my God,
a veteran,
veteran. Oh yeah,
guy, really.
Yeah, and he came out yesterday and he withdrew his concession, and he accused his candidate of being involved in a criminal activity. His opposing candidate, Harris.
So if that goes for a Democrat, that would be I think 41 seats.
If we have an election, a special election,
and McCready
which
wins, it'll be a 41 pickup of 41.
41, unbelievable. The most Democrats have picked up since Watergate.
Yeah,
and Republicans, there'd be a Republican operative sitting next to me and say, "Well, it's not much of a wave."
I know.
It's unbelievable.
Right,
it's unbelievable.
We haven't had a chance to talk since the midterms, and I think because we didn't make it with a couple of our rock stars like Stacey Abrams, great candidates, Stacey Abrams or Andrew Gillum or Beto or Rourke. People thought, "Oh man, we didn't have a good night." We had a damn good night.
Yeah, we had a damn good night, and the thing that's frustrating is that instead of reporting the news on election night, all of the networks and cable stations just have a bunch of people up there kibitzing and giving quote unquote analysis. And so when they see Beto go and Stacey go and Andrew Gillum go, and they see like the Senate race in Indiana was called against Donnelly very early, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is not a wave. This is not a great night. Yeah. Republicans are holding their own. Bill, let me talk about. So we there's no question it was a wave in the House, a tidal wave. I mean, 40 and potentially 41 seats. And by the way, the fact that we took the majority back is enough of a wave for me.
Oh yeah,
I mean that should, even if it was 2 or 3 seats.
Yeah.
Who holds the speaker's gavel won the damn election, Bill.
Right.
But then in the Senate, after after Trump was elected and won in Michigan and Ohio and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, and Republicans looked at the map and they said, "Oh my gosh, we're going to get to 60. We'll take out Senator Casey in Pennsylvania and Sherrod Brown in Ohio and Stabenow in Michigan and Baldwin in Wisconsin." They didn't come close.
Yeah.
They got stomped in all of those races. And when all the dust settled, you include the Doug Jones win for us in Alabama, with that map where they should have picked up tons of seats, they netted 1.
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of this cycle, we lost 4 Democrats. They lost 3 Republicans. They netted a 1 with Democrats facing the worst map in my memory. I can't go back 20 years. We were running in places that Trump had won by plus 20 points.
Right. And
they netted 1. They netted 1.
You have to add to that 7 governors.
Yeah.
7 legislative chambers.
Right.
And 375 by my last count.
Right.
State legislative seats.
Right. And in the process of holding their numbers down in the Senate, we picked up 2 critical states. We knocked off a senator, Dean Heller in Nevada, who was the poster child for efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and we won that seat in Arizona, and that's a state that we have got to be competitive in the presidential election.
Right. And just the kind of icing on the cake yesterday, officially now it's 40 because California 21 was officially called yesterday for T.J. Cox.
Yeah.
And that is, look, again, former state chair, Democratic chair of California. I know
you really set that on the right course out
I
there.
did a long time ago. But the Central
and it's
Valley,
still paying dividends.
We always had good candidates in the Central Valley, but we couldn't get them elected. Very few. That was great country, particularly Kern County, which is Kevin McCarthy's home county.
Yeah.
He and this guy, Tony
Valadeo.
Neighboring districts.
Yeah.
And Valadeo loses. Kevin McCarthy support. He lost to T.J. Cox. So that means that now
Kevin McCarthy's pretty lonely in California now.
Well, there are 40 out of 53 seats.
Yeah,
47 are in Democratic hands.
Right.
No, 46. Sorry, 46. Right. 7.
Right.
7.
Right.
In Republican.
It's stunning, and there's not a Republican representing Orange County anymore. This was their bastion.
Yeah.
This was this was their ballast to L.A. County down in Southern California, and there's no congressional representation from Orange County. And the stunning thing here is that McCarthy is now ascended to the leadership of the House Republicans. And
that's his reward for screwing up so badly.
He walked all of those California members off a cliff. He made them vote for the health care bill, which is incredibly unpopular everywhere. Made them vote for a tax bill that intentionally, and people went on TV saying, this tax bill is going to screw California and New York. They were proud. Republicans were proud of it. They don't, they're going after the coastal, the coastal states and the coastal elites, and they were going after, California and their property tax, and Kevin McCarthy said, "Oh, you got to stick with us. You got to stick with Trump. You got to vote with us." And you know what? All of those people that were in semi-vulnerable seats or maybe Valdez was just maybe, but it was that was like the one that was really going to be tough, and they're all gone now. Thanks, Kevin McCarthy. Thank you, Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah. 7 seats. In Orange County,
right?
John Wayne country,
right?
To call it,
right? That's
absolutely
said
so many times on this show. We always said we're going behind the Iron Curtain, behind the Orange Curtain.
Orange Curtain. That's right.
To Orange County, and,
that's right.
And all 7 of them now Democratic districts. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So, now let's go back to Obamacare because this is the sign-up period.
Yeah.
By the way, that's one of the biggest kept secrets, of course, on the part of the administration because they don't want anybody to know because they don't want people to sign. But I saw this morning that sign-ups are down 11% from last year. Why?
Well, first of all, everyone listening needs to know that they have till December 15th to sign up. Go to healthcare.gov, sign up for healthcare. Tell your friends, your family to sign up for healthcare with the subsidies.
Do you have to re-up every year?
You do have to. You do have to auto enroll again, or you have to enroll again. But
why?
Well,
of course, that has been set up.
That's also been the way the insurance companies have traditionally done it. So, but in any event, you go sign up with the subsidy. The average monthly premium is about $76. Across the country. So, I mean, healthcare is affordable through the Affordable Care Act. But look, it's no secret what's going on here. Donald Trump tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Republicans tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act. That didn't succeed. Now they're trying to sabotage it. They want to kill it. They don't want it helping people. Every policy coming out of that department of HHS or Medicare, CMS, Medicare, Medicaid is designed to lower the number of people getting coverage and make it harder. Put these work requirements in place. 12,500 people have lost health care in Arkansas because of this quote-unquote work requirement, which is just a paperwork requirement. But on open enrollment, they've slashed the advertising budget by 90%. They've cut the enrollment period in half. It used to be 12 weeks, and the last 2 enrollment periods have been 6 weeks. And it's occurring during the election and all of this other stuff that's going on in the news. So it's been very, very hard to break through. But the central reason that we're not breaking through is 90% of the advertising budget went away.
Yeah,
advertising is the key to getting people to have recognition. Plus, they cut the outreach budget. They're not funding navigators. To the extent that they were, they're not giving grants to local communities to enroll people. They want Obamacare to die. They couldn't kill it legislatively now, but they're continuing to try to kill it administratively. And Bill, this is after they got thumped in the midterms on the issue of health care.
Right.
They don't ever learn.
Yeah, I mean, that was the issue, particularly in the House races.
It was.
Up and down.
It was.
And yet they come out of it and still trying to kill the program.
Well, I mean, look, Republicans, there's one thing that's clear after this elections. Republicans don't give a crap about the voters. They could care less. Voters said, stop monkeying with Obamacare. Stop cutting open enrollment. Stop attacking pre-existing conditions. Republicans are continuing to do that. Tony Evers ran in Wisconsin on pulling Wisconsin out of the lawsuit that could threaten people's protections for people with pre-existing conditions. That was one of the issues he ran on
and won
on. And the Republican legislature in Wisconsin is enacting a law saying that the newly and duly elected Democratic Attorney General in Wisconsin cannot pull Wisconsin out of that case. Republicans don't care what the voters say. They don't care what the voters think.
Right.
They only care about their own power.
By the way, so that issue, I was going to ask you about that. That is ongoing.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah, well, the one of the biggest.
Donald Trump keeps saying, we're going to protect. Our party is a party that's going to protect.
He's a liar. He is a liar. Everything they've done, they, as you know, they put in they instituted these junk plans, or what they call short-term plans, where these plans that don't cover pre-existing conditions, they don't cover people's illnesses. I mean, people go out and they say, wow, I can buy insurance. It's really cheap. Oh, great, I'll buy this. And then they show up at the doctor, they show up at the emergency room, they show up at the hospital.
And guess what?
And guess what? It's not covered. It's not covered. Or they cover some things but find out, well, but you had that condition before this policy. Under these short-term policies, we don't have to cover it. While the ACA says that insurance companies have to cover. But and this is in court, by the way, and who knows where this will end up. I mean, the fact that they're just undermining the law administratively that was passed by Congress is going to be a subject of a lot of litigation.
Right. And at least now we will have the House to hold off any efforts to.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to see 45 votes to repeal.
No. I mean, that's the great thing is that in that respect we, the greater we, have protected people's care because they're not going to be able to repeal the law. But the House Democrats need to have a very aggressive health care agenda. The issue of health care didn't go away because we won the House. We need to pass bills to unwind all this sabotage, to require that they do open enrollment next year in the right way, to get rid of junk insurance plans that undermine people's health care and undermine people with pre-existing conditions. They need to have a really aggressive, and I would say, at least for the foreseeable future, a lot of the health care agenda in the House needs to be about confronting what Trump and his administration are doing to harm health care before we get on to other bigger issues. Now, one of those that we need to start tackling right away, because it will take a long time to get a bill, is prescription drugs.
Yeah,
right. 85% of the American people
everybody talks about it, but there's not been any legislation on. Has there introduced?
Well, I mean, I think some individual members have, but there was nothing was going to move with Republicans in charge, and people think there's some hope that maybe Democrats could convince in the House could convince Trump and the Republicans in the Senate to go along with something to reduce the cost of drugs. But we'll see. Remains to be seen.
I just noticed here, CNN, a little flash, that White House Chief of Staff John Kelly is expected to resign soon. He and Trump have stopped speaking in recent days. That's not a surprise. I don't think that's a surprise. I guess I've been actually a little more surprised that there hasn't been more changes in his administration after the midterms. I mean, you would think that his instinct would be to blame the midterms on a bunch of people and just start. Well, we all thought there was going to be a massive exodus or firing.
Right.
And so it started with Jeff Sessions, so we thought, okay, here we go. But then he sort of backed off. Kristen Nielsen's still there. John Kelly's still there. Maybe not for long, it's saying right now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Brad, man, we covered a lot of territory, and we're done.
Oh, my God.
Can't believe it.
All right.
Are you serious? Yeah.
Okay, this is great.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Call up your brother, tell him we love his hair coloring.
All right.
This is the Bill Press Show. giving you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show, live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
It is time for a do-over in North Carolina's number 9, no doubt about it. Massive election frauds start from scratch and have a whole new election down there. What do you say, everybody, on a Friday, December 7? How about it? Great to see you today, and thank you for joining us. You want to know what's going on? You came to the right place. We'll tell you what's happening here in Washington, D.C., around the country, and around the globe. As we join you online, on television, and on the radio, coast to coast, with lots and lots to talk about here. We have a feeling that this news day is just beginning because Paul Manafort is going to be the subject of a new court filing by Special Counsel Robert Mueller a little bit later today. And just a little bit of news from CNN that John Kelly may be on his way out. Oh, boy, it's a good thing we got a good friend like Eugene Scott here from the Washington Post, because he knows everything that's going on in Washington.
As much as it is unfolding in real time. But I'm so glad to be here. It's been too long.
I know. It's good to see you, but you got to run fast to keep up with this stuff, don't you?
Yeah.
And as you were walking in, the John Kelly stuff is
Absolutely. It's surprising, but not surprising.
Yeah.
Right? So from the reports we're seeing so far from CNN, John Kelly and Trump haven't been speaking for days. They're at a crossroads and have realized that the differences that they have just cannot be worked through.
Right.
So I don't think...
Hold that point. We'll get into more of
so
that,
much,
okay? I know. We're just scratching the surface here. Yeah. We'll be here with Eugene Scott. Elaina Plott, who is the new White House reporter for The Atlantic, will be joining us about a half an hour from now. But first... we'll give it to Peter for the big headlines.
Full court press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other big stories making news here on a Friday. Okay, Bill, you probably remember. I remember. It used to be you'd buy a plane ticket, you'd pay the price for the plane ticket, and that covered taking your seat, taking your bag, everything else, right? That was just the price you paid. But of course now,
for the good old days.
Those days are long gone. Just about every airline has what they call ancillary revenue, and this means that if you want to choose your seat, you have to pay. If you want to check a bag, you have to pay. If you want to check a carry-on bag, you have to pay. All different all different airlines have different rules, but they all have something that you can.
I would say except for Southwest.
Well, they have things too that you can. You can pay. Like,
I'm sorry, they do.
You can pay to get like an early.
If you want an early
thing or a better seat. Right. So like Southwest does better than other airlines, but
you don't
they
have
all
to pay
have
to check a bag.
They all have them.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. As of now, today, airlines report that 50% of their income, 50% of their income come from those ancillary fees. It's
kidding.
not just the price of an airline ticket anymore.
Yeah.
They rely on those fees as much as they do for the cost of a ticket. Is that crazy?
It is crazy.
I mean, it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you just bought a plane ticket.
Yeah. But it's a long conversation.
Yeah.
It might be better than just raising the fares for everybody.
Yeah.
Because you can get your seat.
You can maneuver it.
You can get your seat in the economy in the back that you don't have to pay for and not have to pay higher fare.
Yeah. Yesterday, right as the show was ending, the Golden Globe nominations were announced.
Yeah.
Leading the way for the movies is Vice, the Adam McKay-directed film starring Christian Bale as Dick Cheney. It looks amazing.
I know. I haven't seen it yet.
It led all films with 6 nominations. It was followed closely by The Favorite, A Star is Born, and Green Book, which was each received 5 nominations apiece.
So good. I saw Green Book last weekend. Eugene, I don't know whether you've seen Green Book, but it is a phenomenal movie. Really great.
You enjoyed it?
Loved it.
Yeah, I have not seen it. My mentee actually had the privilege of playing piano at the Washington debut of it.
Oh, wow.
He's really awesome. Like, it was really great. He spoke very highly of it.
Yeah.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Yes, indeed. Nobody is allowed to hire undocumented workers in this country. Except me. That's what Donald Trump is saying this morning with the big news out of Bedminster, New Jersey. Oops. Oops. What? You mean another example of a Trump hypocrisy? Hello, everybody. What do you say on a Friday, December 7th? So good to see you today. Welcome to the program as we come to you live from our nation's capital and join you in every little nook and cranny, every corner of this great country of ours. We're there with you online, on the radio, and on television. Thanks so much for being with us. Join me in saying hello to our good friend from the Washington Post, political reporter for The Fix, Eugene Scott, the one and only. Eugene, again, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So as we look there, CNN leading the news this morning with their report that they just said, breaking news, that Chief of Staff John Kelly expected to resign soon. The president's going off to Kansas City today. Unlikely that John Kelly will be on the Air Force One with him. Maybe he'll be cleaning out his desk at the same time. If something like that comes out, and they say they've got several sources, it's been rumored for a long time. It's not going to linger much longer, would you say?
It has been rumored for a long time, and that's why I think quite a few viewers, when they see the headline expected to, may roll their eyes or at least aren't holding their breath. But it appears, to your point earlier, that the two have not been in communication for a while. And so it would be a surprise if John Kelly actually does go with the president to Kansas City today. But the reality has been that they've just had a really difficult time getting on the same page about the direction of the country, the policy agenda of this White House, and just how to figure out how to find solutions to their differences.
Let's say this is true and he's gone either today or soon. He joins a long list of people who were once very, very close, praised mightily by the president, and then thrown under the bus. I mean, Michael Cohen, right? Just
Absolutely.
in April, he was saying, Michael Cohen's a great man. He's been my friend. He's my business partner, the whole thing. And now he's a liar. He's a weak man. John Kelly at one time, he said, General Kelly, kept calling him General Kelly, that they were like soulmates almost, talked about everything, agreed on everything. What happened?
Well, I think one of the things that's most interesting about Kelly opposed to Cohen is that Kelly is someone who Trump did not have a relationship with before, not a meaningful one at least, whose legacy pre-Trump was pretty solid in terms of even among his critics, I would at least say, and who the watching the Trumpification of John Kelly perhaps has left many Americans perhaps with a very negative view of him. And considering that he was brought in supposedly to calm Trump's worst impulses, eliminate chaos, and that does not appear
bring some order
to the White House. And it seems like he perhaps has expanded the disorder and left many people really frustrated on both sides of the aisle.
Right. And he also, a couple of times where he stepped over the line, particularly on immigration, remember? And also on the comments that he made about the Congresswoman
Frederica Wilson
from Florida,
right?
And also it's been reported that at some point, maybe a couple of months ago, whatever, he basically gave up. Right? That he was in the middle of the day, he'd be at the gym. He just wasn't even trying to rein Trump in anymore.
Well, I think what I saw was that he gave up in part because it really is an impossible task. I mean,
absolutely.
Trump is going to be Trump. Corey Lewandowski told us to let Trump be Trump. Any of those waiting for a pivot should not be holding their breath at this point. And Trump became who he is in part because the people who supported him wanted him to be Trump. His approval ratings remain high amongst his loyalists. He is not at all interested in doing what most presidents do when they get in the White House, which is trying to win over the people that they lost. And so I think he feels like, look, I did things my way and I won. I'm not really interested in doing things the John Kelly way.
Peter, well, of course, you've got your phone. I've got mine. I'll be curious if we see any tweet from Donald Trump about Kelly.
I just looked, actually.
Yeah.
He has not tweeted yet about John Kelly. He's tweeted about Robert Mueller and other stuff this morning. But
He's been
no
tweeting like mad,
John
starting even before our show began this morning. He was off to an early start.
Executive time is really something this morning.
But the reason I thought of that is because of his tweet. The last time there were rumors about John Kelly leaving, the president said he's agreed to stay until 2020.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard that. We've heard that quite a few times, which is why so many people in the media and American citizens do not always believe people when they say, I'm supporting this president and I'll be here, forever. I was reading reports yesterday about Nikki Haley's going to stay in New York. She's going to write a book. And, everyone was like, she is definitely pro-Trump 2020. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Just like with John Kelly, we will see.
Speaking of Nikki Haley, her successor, now we know, is going to be Heather Nauert, who is the spokesperson for the State Department, briefings at the State Department. And before that was a co-host of Fox and Friends.
Yeah.
So the potential employee pool for Donald Trump really is Fox News. Cable television, certainly, but Fox News particularly.
It certainly appears to be that that Fox News is the internship equivalent to getting into the White House.
Yeah.
Especially in the communications department. And, when you leave as well. I mean, we saw with Hope Hicks. Hope Hicks and Bill Shine pretty much just flopped jobs, it appears.
I had a conversation with Bill Shine the other night at our holiday party. And there he is, right from Fox News to the Trump White House, right?
Yeah.
Matt Whitaker, Attorney General, right from cable television to Attorney General of the United States. Heather Nauert, zero government experience other than a few briefings at the State Department, because they don't happen all that often, and zero foreign policy experience, will now be our ambassador to the United Nations.
Yeah, and she
post that Adlai Stevenson once held, Madeleine Albright once held, Susan Rice once held.
Yeah,
I mean, foreign policy, experts,
wonks.
Right.
I mean,
Now we got Heather Nauert.
Well, she follows in the tradition of Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump and people who have no meaningful experience in the areas in which they are now this country's top individuals for. And it'll be interesting in seeing, quite frankly, after the Trump White House, whenever this administration ends, what goes into cleaning up much of the global mess that has perhaps been made from this White House, according to its critics.
Right. In terms of the mess of the White House, I was reminded of that this morning. So you mentioned Jared Kushner. One of the many problems that Jared Kushner was supposed to resolve and was put in charge of, not just peace in the Middle East, right, but also, and not just government reform of the entire federal government, but also reform of the criminal justice system, which is badly needed.
Absolutely.
Particularly our sentencing system. There are too many, particularly young black men in prison for nonviolent crimes, drug crimes, for these long mandatory sentences, which is crazy.
And we've seen people on both sides of the aisle speak out against that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now we have a case where Kushner has got the President of the United States in support of this legislation. It's bipartisan legislation in the United States Senate. And Mitch McConnell says, we're too busy to even vote on it. Now, when you control the House and the Senate and the White House, and the president and leaders of both parties are supporting legislation, and Mitch McConnell says, no, I don't like it, we're not going to have a vote on it.
Right.
I mean, what does that say about control, right?
Yeah, McConnell is really communicating to many people in America, not just on the left, people who would like to see we revisit how we treat Americans who've been incarcerated, but people on his own aisle, on his own side, in his own state. I covered Rand Paul during the 2016 election, who's been very vocal about the need.
This is a big issue for Rand Paul.
For criminal justice reform. And it's a big issue for Rand Paul, in part because it's a big issue for many people in Kentucky. There are black people and white working class people who have seen their lives, their families, and their communities devastated because of harsh sentencing and had a very difficult time rehabilitating themselves, integrating back into society, getting a job, finding places to live, getting educated, and living the rest of their lives and aspiring on to all of the dreams and ideals that America believes it upholds. And so it's been really fascinating to see McConnell respond in that way. And it'll be really interesting to see what impact it has on his legacy long term from people on both sides of the aisle. I think what this week should teach many of us is that when your time here on earth is over and you come from a political background, people will talk about every single thing you did right and every single thing you did wrong. And these are individuals who are now in the position to minimize the wrongs that they do so that they can have as glowing of an obituary and recollection of their time in office as possible.
It does, but it does make you wonder who's in charge around here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and it varies depending on the actual issue, obviously. But I mean, right now, what that communicated, I think, to the White House and to people perhaps looking at Trump to be a leader in this area, despite his past history with, calling, for the death penalty for Black and Latino teenagers who, quite frankly, have not been convicted of anything, is that they can't look to Trump to be a leader in criminal justice reform if Mitch McConnell ultimately is going to have the last say.
Yeah. No, they had this a couple of weeks ago, this big ceremony down at the White House.
They did.
We all talked about it. And the president there saying, I support this legislation. He had the co-authors there, Jared Kushner there. And it was like a done deal. And I'm thinking, no, it's not a done deal because they got to get the bill passed.
Right. And I remember
McConnell basically says, What else are they doing? They're doing nothing.
I was going to say, busy with what?
Busy
with what? I remember talking to quite a few Democratic senators after that, moment, which came in part, I believe, after the Republicans' defeat in the midterm elections. And Trump had a few days where he really was advocating for bipartisanship and perhaps saying that we're going to work together more with the new Congress. And quite a few Democratic senators were like, this is a good step. We want to see a little more happen. We have some questions about this. But it seems like, regardless, it's not even going anywhere as of right now until McConnell has a change of heart.
Eugene Scott with us from the Washington Post, WashingtonPost.com. I know we're jumping around but there's just a lot of stories, a lot of stuff out there. And some of the stuff we haven't had a chance to talk about this morning. One thing, and I did a column on the George H.W. Bush service this week and how it was about President Bush, not about President Trump, but in effect,
absolutely,
it was about President Trump as well, right? I mean, almost every statement reflected back on the comparison between, if you will, so many character traits of George H.W. Bush, which do not exist at all in Donald Trump. John Meacham saying Bush's life creed was, tell the truth, don't blame anybody.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the things that was most interesting about recalling Bush's legacy, regardless of if you're supportive of him or not, what does appear to be obvious is that he had a lifelong commitment to public service. George H.W. Bush had at least 4, maybe 5 different positions that in a normal life would be the peak of someone's public service. I mean, from his involvement with the CIA, his ambassadorship, Senate, race, White House, vice president. I mean, like he had all of these peaks that he could have chosen not to have had he chosen a life outside of public service. And, with all due respect to our current president, he does not have a track record of public service. Even his attempts, his foundation work have been revealed not to be service-oriented or philanthropic as communicated.
Right.
And one thing I thought that was very interesting to your point in terms of the contrast between Trump and Bush, which no one was directly communicating, is the number of journalists who wrote obits who got hate mail from Trump supporters saying you're trying to speak ill of Trump. Karen Tumulty of the Washington Post tweeted some of the hate mail. She didn't even mention Trump in her obit. They're like, "Oh, you're just making jabs at Trump." It's the amount of
that's because the comparisons were so
obvious. So obvious.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the one risk was that we ended up, painting George H.W. Bush as a saint, which he was not.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Clarence Thomas, George Bush, right? Willie Horton.
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah. No.
George Bush. We have to remember that side. The AIDS crisis.
Yeah.
It went on for years before George Bush, like Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Refused to recognize it and provide any federal help. So you got to put that in context, but particularly on the Willie Horton thing, which you wrote about.
No, it's true, Bill. It's important to, when remembering people in the policy-making space, to examine the implications of their policy making. And one thing that we know, which we should have always known, is that the decisions you make when you are in office have implications for years, if not decades. I spent, the last week or so learning way more about George H.W. Bush and his approach to politics than I knew prior to his death. And one of the things that was most fascinating to me is seeing that he was very involved in stoking the cultural anxieties of white Americans, working class Americans, affluent white Americans that we've seen President Trump lean into more aggressively. Bush launched his presidential campaign in Mississippi. This is not a state that he had a direct tie to, but in that moment, he's communicating.
Like Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Philadelphia, Mississippi.
He's communicating. I mean, and for those not familiar with the history of racism and hate crimes in Philadelphia, Mississippi, directed at those who were trying to grant Black Americans not just civil rights but voting rights in particular, that was definitely a dog whistle or a bullhorn, some might say. The criminal justice mass incarceration complex that's too prevalent in our country right now. We saw with the Willie Horton ad, the stoking of that. We've seen just the president's pushback on the Civil Rights Act of 1964, saying that he was more concerned about the majority of Americans being affected by a minority of Americans receiving more rights. And so this was not an individual who had the most stellar reputation when it came to race relations. Lastly, as you said, replacing Thurgood Marshall, the first Black person on the Supreme Court who argued for the desegregation of public schools, with Clarence Thomas, who most people would argue is the most conservative justice perhaps in the last 30 to 40 years. And I think what's very, very important that we don't talk about a lot is the impact that his administration had on LGBT Americans, specifically related to the AIDS epidemic, leading thousands of people to protests, not just outside the White House, but they went to Kennebunkport. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but his home in Maine, to ask for more support, resources, legislation, to help people who were dying of AIDS. And Bush's initial response was a lack of interest because of moral reasons. He wanted people who were suffering from this illness to just police their behavior.
He said it was a behavioral crisis, not a public health crisis.
And that's rooted in his loyalty to the white evangelicals who helped get him elected, who viewed AIDS primarily as this thing that doesn't happen to people who aren't gay. But we saw people like Magic Johnson, who was on his commission for HIV and AIDS, resign because of frustration with the lack of response from this administration. And by this time, we began to see the illness affect people who were not just gay. Celebrities like Arthur Ashe and, Magic Johnson.
It was important, I think, on your part and others to put that, just to remind people.
It's just helpful.
Yeah. No, well, it's speaking truth to power.
It is. And I mean, I feel I was watching the Bush granddaughters yesterday in Texas, eulogize their grandfather. And as someone who has been there himself, I definitely felt for them. I also felt for the Americans who've lost their grandfathers to criminal justice system policies that are problematic and just poor legislation related to health care.
Hey, I just want to jump in really quickly. I just saw this tweet I wanted to read. This goes back to an earlier conversation. No, it's not from Donald Trump. It's not from Donald Trump. This goes back to an earlier conversation about John Kelly. This morning's White House senior staff meeting, which would have been led by Chief of Staff John Kelly, has been canceled.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's an ominous sign.
It's a little ominous, isn't it?
Yeah. So the White House watch down there, I'm sure people are going to be looking to see if he even shows up for work this morning. I want to ask you also about we're seeing more and more people jump in on the Democratic side.
Everybody's
to the 2020 campaign. Now we're starting to see some people drop out.
Yeah.
Deval Patrick.
Yeah.
Good man. And a good governor. And everybody thought at one time he might be the next Barack Obama. Everybody was looking for the next Barack Obama. But, and a business background as well as executive background. What happened?
Well, from what we know, Deval Patrick, two-time governor of Massachusetts, first black governor, first and only black governor of Massachusetts, decided that the cost to people close to him of running for president was just too great for him to throw his name in the ring officially. He did not go into details, but those familiar with his political career realize that his wife, Diane, just really took being a first lady very difficult. She was hospitalized for depression. Just yeah.
First Lady of Massachusetts.
First Lady of Massachusetts.
Wow.
Just because of the criticism, the media hounding. They look at everything, right? I remember there being a scandal in Massachusetts about them spending like $12,000 on curtains in the governor's mansion, and him upgrading perhaps some of the official cars to like Cadillacs, and just having your integrity questioned. And it appeared that he just did not want to put the people closest to him in that position. And the reality is 2020 is going to be incredibly different from his gubernatorial races, and those type of things would come up, and even more. And it could be very stressful. And it was, to me, just a window into some of the challenges that we can expect people to face in the next year or so that many of them won't want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a good man and dropped out. At the same time, we had Michael Avenatti announced he was going to run, which I think was good news for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
The idea that he thought anybody took him seriously.
I think the thing that was a bit unfortunate to me is that it took something as extreme as him
being accused of domestic violence
to realize that he was not the person that most Democrats would have backed, and what's also interesting, is that the standards that Democrats will have for their candidate will be very different, I think, for the standards that the base has for Trump. No, Trump has not been accused of domestic violence, but he certainly has been accused of mistreating women quite a bit, and that certainly didn't keep those from supporting him who ultimately did. One thing I did want to say about Patrick that I think was interesting, that didn't get a lot of attention, he's a managing director at Bain Capital, which we know was founded by Mitt Romney, now in the Senate. Crazy how the world just changes. I know. But was former Massachusetts governor, and Romney got quite a bit of heat about being involved in private equity. Patrick from the left, like the progressives, would not, I don't think, handle that lightly. Would have real questions about what his work involved.
No doubt.
And so I think he could have saved himself a bit from just those really difficult conversations.
I mean, look at the flack that Hillary got for the speeches she gave to Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
And Cory Booker has that little bit of a problem too. With being a Goldman Sachs.
And we're going to see that come up quite a bit, I think, in 2020.
Just on the lighter side, Jeopardy last night, sort of a window into where people get their news today, maybe, or what people are watching, or what people are reading. Maybe it shows the impact of the social media. I'm not sure what it shows, but so here's the question. The question, Peter, was
so the category was blank news.
Blank news, right.
So it was all different questions about cable news across the board.
And the nobody knew nothing is basically what it is. So here he's asking different questions about, what's this show, what's that show, what's that show? Mm-hmm. The lack of knowledge, to me, I think, is pretty stunning. Here he is. Here it is.
Blank News 600. It's on CNN from 4 to 6 a.m. Eastern Time. This start. It's called Early Start. Get your fill of business in the afternoon. Power this. Tiffany.
What is Power Hour?
No. Alexander.
What is Power Half Hour?
No. What is Power Lunch? It airs every Sunday morning on ABC. This blank. Dave?
What is Morning?
No. Alexander or Tiffany? What is This Week with George Stephanopoulos?
Isn't it kind of funny?
It's hilarious. So the first national TV appearance I made was on Early Start on CNN.
All right.
So, of course, I got that one correct.
Yeah, right.
But, I'm not surprised. I mean, we've seen data that the average age of people consuming CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC are people in their late 60s. People are not watching these shows as much as, the networks were like, especially at 4 a.m. And so I wasn't surprised by that. It was humbling though.
I think it's a good reminder of the bubble that we live in.
It so is.
We do live in a bubble.
It so is, and the importance of remembering that bubble. Sometimes we're just talking, and I easily forget. I just think I'm talking to you, Bill, and I'm just naming out names, and we're just assuming that people know who these people are, and it's not wrong that they don't, but they have lives and families and are engaged in other things, and so we just can't assume that people are as consumed as we are.
But it does show again that most people, particularly younger people today, and younger from maybe 50 on down, right, or 55 on down, are not tuned into that little screen. Right? No, they're tuned into this, or they're tuned into their computer, and they're certainly not reading. I'm sorry, with all due respect. Newspapers.
Oh, I mean, so two things. One, I know so many people who don't even own a TV because they just have things like Netflix and Hulu. And I don't mean own a TV. I mean don't have cable.
Got it.
Yes, they have TV.
Right.
So that's not surprising as well. And most people that we know who read the New York Times every day, the Washington Post every day, Wall Street Journal every day, read it on their phones, not the hard copy. Yeah.
I mean, I have to tell you, I can't tell you how old and antiquated I feel that every day when I open the front door in the morning, right, I have a copy of the New York Times in print and the Washington Post in print. How many people today get a paper delivered to their front door?
I don't think you look old. I think you look classic.
There you go. There you go.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, no one talks about old cars.
No, you look
vintage.
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 Yes.
That's it.
Thank you, friend. The check's in the mail.
I appreciate that.
Well, boy, with this John Kelly news, the things are buzzing at the White House, you can bet. Elaina Plott covers the White House, brand new for The Atlantic. She joins me and Eugene Scott and all of you coming up next. A quick break. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
And here we go into the weekend, and it is the end of the first week, rather, of the Free Speech TV pledge drive for this winter. And hey, folks, where the hell are you? Come on, wake up and get with it here. We need your help. Things have been pretty slow so far. I know we all tend to do it, put things off, but damn it, now's the time. Get up. Don't go into the weekend without making your contribution to Free Speech TV because we need your help. You know how it works. Everybody says they bitch about Fox News. They got all these conservatives on Fox News. It's the pro-Trump network. We need something to counter that. We got something to counter that right here on Free Speech TV. That's who we are. The only full-time 24/7 progressive TV channel in the entire country every day, 24/7. With a great lineup of hosts and a great lineup of guests of bringing you the news of the day and giving you a chance to talk back about it and express your comments about the news of the day. This is the Progressive Club. This is the resistance, the headquarters of the resistance in the United States. So we got it. We just got to keep it going, but we can't do it without your help. So come on, stop putting it off. Step up to the plate today. Be as generous as you can. We need your help. That's the way Free Speech TV works. I remind you again, without you, we're nothing. Without you, we're not on the air because there's no government money, no corporate money, no foundation money, no Koch brothers money. It is all of you. So please, let us feel the love here these holidays with your help, either as generously as you can. Every single dollar counts. $20 contribution will send you a little Free Speech TV sticker so you can show you're part of the club. For a $120 contribution, we'll send you a Free Speech TV calendar. You can follow us every day of next year. That's for a $60 pledge, rather. For a $120 pledge, a Free Speech TV T-shirt and that bumper sticker as well. And we love to invite you, if you can make it, $1,000 to Free Speech TV. Invite you to Washington with a friend so that Carol and I can take you out to dinner at one of our great restaurants on Capitol Hill and come in the next day and meet the team here. And then you can do the whole business and see all the sites in Washington while you're in town. But the most important thing is, again, end of the first week of the drive. If you haven't already done so, and so many of you haven't, Let us hear from you today. Make that call. Make your contribution, your pledge at 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org/donate, freespeech.org/donate. It's not enough to complain. We got to join together. We got to fight together. We got to gather together every day around Free Speech TV, and we can only do so with your help. Do it now.
Take the Bill Press Show anywhere you go. Download our free podcast, search for the Bill Press Show on iTunes, and catch the highlights from every show.
Okay, we are back here on the Bill Press Show on this Friday, December 7. Great to have you with us today as we come to you live from Washington, D.C., capital of the free world. We're brought to you today by the United Steelworkers and their international president, Leo Gerard. The United Steelworkers, North America's largest industrial union, representing 1.2 million, over 1.2 million active and retired members. Check out their website at usw.org. Eugene Scott from the Washington Post here as a friend of Bill this entire hour for all the big news of the day. And we're joined by the brand new correspondent from the Atlantic to the White House press corps, Elaina Plott. Hello, Elaina. Nice to see you.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
I just have one thing I want to say to Elaina really quick.
Yes.
Roll Tide.
Thank you.
Roll damn Tide.
Yes, absolutely.
Fellow Alabama fan in studio. I have to recognize it.
Awesome.
What's going on here? I
Yeah. No, I'm an ACC alum, but I respect the SEC. Yeah.
Got to. You have to.
Yeah, I mean, you have no choice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's very, very true. Very true.
Despite that, welcome. Yes.
Thank you.
So there was a little bit of breaking White House news this morning we were talking about before you got here with at least CNN reporting that John Kelly's days may be numbered, or maybe his hours may be numbered. What do you know? What do you hear? What do you think?
I haven't heard anything differently from what CNN is reporting. I pinged a White House source on the way here, and ultimately the thing with staff shakeups, as you all have seen with this White House, is people's fates change by the minute. Mm-hmm. It's actually, in many reasons why starting this job, I've tried in mapping out kind of my plans for coverage for the rest of the year, beginning of next year. I kind of want to stay away from those staff shakeup stories because you never really know what's going to happen.
Right. But it could, I mean, when this comes out, one thing, this White House leaks a lot, right? There are a lot of people in the White House officially, and a lot of people in there take pride sort of in leaking. For this to get out, Eugene, probably means there's something behind it, no?
Well, it seems like it. I think this one seems real for some reason based off of the information that's been made available so far from CNN and what's happening in my Slack account.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, to Elaina's point, that headline, John Kelly expected to resign soon, has to be a headline they just had waiting, because like we really have seen that quite a few times.
All right. So how long before Sean Hannity is named the new chief of staff?
Do you want to do over under 4 hours? We could do that. That's fine.
Or some people say that he didn't need John Kelly because Sean Hannity's always been the chief of staff, or assumed the role of chief of staff.
Well, I mean, we have seen reports that they are regularly in communication, and perhaps about things that Hannity does not have a security clearance for. And we know that this is a president who takes a lot of his cues about what should happen in America and the world from Fox News.
You talk about an impossible job.
I mean, absolutely. But also, it's not even just that Trump doesn't feel that he needs John Kelly as chief of staff. He sees himself as the communicator in chief as well. It's why the communications shop has just felt so hamstrung and haphazard in the last 2 years. I mean, this is someone who really feels confident enough in his own approach to issues and problems that he doesn't need the people around him.
Right.
I will never forget during the campaign, a coworker of mine said, and they were responding to how willing Trump seemed to be at that time to talk to the president and have these scrums. And they said it's clear that he doesn't really want to be the president. He wants to be the White House press secretary. and essentially he really has.
He is.
Right.
Today.
He essentially has really guided his own communication strategy or lack of.
Right. Another person, John Kelly is not the only person in the news with White House connections today. There's also Victorina Morales. She is an employee up at Bedminster, New Jersey, at the Trump International Golf Club. She is the woman who makes Donald Trump's bed, who cleans his toilet and dusts his crystal ball trophies, according to the New York Times. Sorry about that, Eugene. I'm sure the same stories in the Washington Post.
Never heard of
it. When the president is in residence, she wears a Secret Service pin, granting her complete access to all of his quarters. Right, exactly. And she came forward yesterday to point out that she crossed the border illegally in 1999. She's been hired, working at the Bedminster Trump Golf Club since 2013, and she says she's one of probably about a dozen undocumented workers who work there. This sort of undercuts part of Donald Trump's message about undocumented workers.
Oh, it certainly does. And I don't think the White House has responded in any way to this piece yet. But also, I mean, what a journalistic feat. I'm sure you can both, empathize with how exciting it must be to have landed a subject like that, willing to go on the record, be photographed, and talk about something so sensitive as that, especially when the commander-in-chief of this country has come out as kind of antithetical to everything this woman stands for in her background.
Yeah, and with quite a risk. I mean, there was a woman profiled who was once undocumented but now has legal status, but that's not her story. And so there are real implications for it. But one thing that was fascinating to me, I guess there are two things. One, I don't think people should be surprised that there are undocumented people working at any Trump property based on quite a few things. I mean, she admitted that they falsified papers. This happens far more.
Thank you for adding that.
Yeah.
That she says that at least some of her supervisors there knew she did not have documentation. She was here illegally, and they helped her get phony documents.
Which is hardly surprising.
Yeah, it's just not. It happens more often than not. I think there are some people, I guess, who think that if Trump really had these deep convictions that these people should not be employed somehow he had systems in place to avoid being duped by these papers. But it really is difficult in many ways. And I think many of his supporters will argue that point, that he didn't know, he can't check everything. It's not like he willingly did these things. But the fact is we don't know that much yet.
Actually, one thing I'll add. So before I started as a White House reporter, I covered Capitol Hill for 3 years. And of course, we've seen with this year's government brinkmanship, we get to these spending bills, always a huge fight over immigration. And one thing that has made Trump really unwilling to kind of go along with his base supporters, people like the members of the Freedom Caucus, is because they're insistent that provisions requiring E-Verify in businesses across America be included in spending bills related to immigration. And he is ardently opposed to E-Verify. And you read stories like this and you understand why. I mean, so to me, if his supporters, and I think you're so right, were to argue that he can't know possibly what goes on at a granular level at all of his hotels, I think he's perfectly aware. He's worked in construction and real estate for a long time. He knows exactly why E-Verify would, hamper his business operations. And I've always found that interesting that, he talks about the wall constantly, but when it comes to E-Verify in these negotiations before spending bills, he could not be more convicted that it's not the right thing.
But we also do know about Trump is that there have been other opportunities where he has intentionally and aggressively sought foreign workers for his projects and his properties. But because one would assume this is a more economical decision for him.
Right. Particularly in Mar-a-Lago, the cases of under that HB21, or I can never remember what the initials are.
But the foreign contracts,
I just want to point out finally that so I saw these two women last night, both on CBS News and NBC News and front page Wash Post and front page New York Times this morning. She said that it was a journalistic coup. And they, of course, put their, not just their jobs, but their life in the United States on the line by coming forward. But why would they do that? She told reporters yesterday, quote, "We are tired of the abuse, the insults, the way he talks about us when he knows that we are here helping him make money." Kind of pokes through the whole hypocrisy of the situation.
Definitely.
Peter, what do you got?
I just want to throw in a little bit of news. We just got, it's the first Friday in December.
Oh,
so we got the job numbers for November. The economy added 155,000 jobs in November. That is down from 237,000 in
good.
October. Still very good. The unemployment rate remained near a historic low at 3.7%. That is where we still are.
Yeah. It's a little bit of good news, which the White House
still positive job growth.
I've lost track of how many months of positive job growth, but this is the 10th year of the economic recovery. Got a little shaky this week with the tariffs and China falling apart and the Dow crashing 799 points. And in light of this is one thing that yesterday that hit the market badly with the news that the very time that our president and the president of China were saying they had this new deal, at that very hour they were celebrating this deal in Argentina, the Canadian government was arresting a top Chinese executive at the request of the United States, which has made the president of China not too happy to learn that this was taking place. Does this sort of screw this whole truce with China?
I'm not sure if we know that a truce ever was actually struck.
Well, that's a good point. Right.
Yeah, there have been so many.
Truce was claimed, but was it actually?
Yeah.
I'm not even sure Larry Kudlow himself knows. He himself seems to have, since Argentina, said quite a few different things about whether anything was actually struck with China over the weekend. So I think with regard to tariffs, it's probably safer to assume that there's nothing in place right now in terms of a deal.
In fact, we've played several clips of Larry Kudlow, and the verbs that he used were very instructive. He said, I assume, I think, we expect, or that's my guess.
Sure.
Very reassuring.
Yeah. Indeed. And even if a truce had been made, one should know enough about this White House foreign policy not to believe that anything is in stone long enough to be walked back. I mean, the reality is one of the main challenges I think a lot of people in our foreign policy community have had was seeing that this is not a president who consistently behaves towards our allies as well, even as like our enemies, in a way that seems deeply rooted in some consistent theory and approach based on, history, data and research, and the long-term best interest, perhaps, of policymaking related to specific issues.
So today is Friday, and we saw the special counsel come forward on, I think was it Tuesday, with his plea, the papers that he filed related to Michael Flynn. Today, the special counsel is scheduled to file papers related to what should happen to Paul Manafort, whom he accused last week of reneging on his deal to tell the truth and to cooperate. What do we expect, Elaina, today? And you've written about the final report, and the White House is maybe not ready for that. But before we get into that, what do we expect today, both of you, from Robert Mueller today vis-a-vis Manafort?
What we can expect, I think, just in terms of transparency, is to see what Paul Manafort may have lied about to the special counsel, what sorts of things he may have said to Robert Mueller in the hopes of striking a plea deal, but then sort of, went back to allies in the Trump administration to report to them otherwise. So if we get, insight into what Paul Manafort was untruthful about, we may know more about what exactly Donald Trump and his closest allies might have to be worried about when a full report does come down.
Right. And Manafort could be facing a good chunk of time in prison or a pardon, I guess, huh?
Indeed. I mean, and what's also, I guess, possible is to discover just how much Manafort has been working with Mueller, and perhaps how that could influence the decision in terms of his fate in prison or not. As we've seen earlier, I think people expected to see a harsher response to Flynn, only to discover that was not the case because of his cooperation. And so the reason why I think eyes could be on that is because the president has continued to send signals, I believe, as do many people believe, to Manafort that said, do not perhaps talk, do not cooperate. There could possibly be a reward on the other side if you do not. And so we'll see what Manafort decided to do ultimately, and what the implications of that could be for the White House.
So if things went kind of quiet during the midterms, right? I think Mueller recognized he didn't want to be accused of interfering in any way with the midterms. But since the midterms, we've had Cohen's guilty plea, we've had the filings on Michael Flynn. We had the accusation by the charge by the special counsel that Manafort had broken his deal. Now today we're going to have the Manafort filings. It all looks like things are really in high gear, maybe leading up to the final report. Elaina, you've reported that you would think the White House would be all ready to go. I mean, what's Rudy Giuliani doing, right?
Tweeting.
Getting ready to know how to respond to this report, and that's not the case?
No, I talked to Rudy Giuliani 2 days ago for about half an hour, and
my God, that must have been
it was quite a
life.
time. Yeah, a delightful start to the beat. But to your point about Manafort, I asked him specifically, is the president still interested or open to pardoning Manafort? And he said nothing has changed in terms of his openness. But he pointed out that one thing that Trump has said to him being Rudy Giuliani, is that the notion that Paul Manafort is in solitary confinement right now just really, really incenses him. And in fact, Rudy Giuliani said that Trump said to him, don't they realize we're America, when talking about Paul Manafort in solitary confinement?
But by the way, let's just add, if he's in solitary confinement, all right, you know what that probably means, right? He may not be able to leave the room, but he's got, I'm sure, a very comfortable surrounding. His own bathroom, his own color TV, his own computer, his own bed, his own couch. Yeah. He's not in a little cell with one little pad and a bucket to pee in.
But it seems as though those are the connotations Trump is operating off of.
Course.
But what Giuliani told me essentially is that for Trump, focusing on the outcome as it relates to him personally has never been, the focal point of this White House. One person I talked to was Joe Lockhart, who was press secretary for Bill Clinton as they prepped for the Starr report. It's really hard to find an analog for the Mueller investigation, but I figured that might be as close as we could get in trying to, make comparisons. And one thing he told me was that, one thing that was different about our White House, and I imagine if something similar happened in the Bush White House, is that it never occurred to us that the president wouldn't have been entirely honest with his closest aides about what might be coming and say, this is the absolute worst case scenario because this is exactly what did and didn't happen in the campaign. And that's what it takes to make a plan, right? When you're mapping out, okay, what is the best thing that could come of this report? What is the worst? What are the potential responses we have? If Trump is not being honest with those closest to him about what really did go on in 2016, there's no possible way for them to have a plan.
Yeah.
So they're going to be caught flat-footed, or could be.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps obviously, and there are a few reasons for that. One, if that's the case, perhaps Trump just doesn't trust some of the people who are closest to him, which would be understandable considering how new some of these people are, which we talked about with John Kelly just earlier. And so this is not a president, even in his business life, who was known for having a lot of close friends and allies and people that he could rely on or boys. Like they're just, we've not seen people who've said that they had that type of relationship with the president. It's also possible that, with all due respect, the president may not even remember everything. Some of these conversations were very murky. Whether or not he was present for all of them is still up in question. Whether or not the people who were present relied to him any information or all of the information, there's just a lot that was happening on. And I think it kind of reveals just the depth of chaos and disorganization that existed with not just this White House, but this campaign from day one.
Well, it has been the chaos on both sides. Like in the beginning, his attorneys were saying, "Look, if you did nothing wrong, let's just cooperate and let this thing run its course." And meanwhile, they were trying to argue that approach, and Donald Trump was out there attacking it as a witch hunt from the very beginning. Right?
So to your point, I was just alerted that Trump tweeted in response to my article, basically, he just said, it has been incorrectly reported that Rudy Giuliani will not be doing a counter to the Mueller report. That is fake news. Already 87 pages done, but obviously cannot complete until we see the final witch hunt report.
There you are, right here.
In real time.
In real time on the Bill Press Show, you get your response from the president. And would you like to respond to the president?
I mean, you could just look at the quotes from Rudy Giuliani, which is to say we've had to put all planning on hold. One, because it took the president 3 weeks to answer his questions for Mueller, those written responses. And what Giuliani said to me, normally that would take my clients 2 days. I'm not sure why he said that to me, but said that it was actually really difficult for Trump, that he got distracted very easily, and that it was a, quote, real job to remember what happened in 2016.
It's been so fascinating watching the president push back on reporting and yet not acknowledge that the reporting has people quoted on the record from your team. This is where this information is often coming from.
No, fact check here. The president says, right, his counter report is already in progress, and there are 87 pages of it written already. How do we know? What do we know about the veracity of that? And it appears from what you said that Rudy Giuliani, if that's true, doesn't know about that.
Well, Rudy Giuliani over the summer said we would like to do a counter report. And it was something when reporters would follow up with him, it was always in a very kind of predictive sense. You know, I imagine we will start getting together something like this. But, you know, one thing he kept saying to me over the phone was, how can we possibly, you know, really get in depth with a counter report if we don't know what's coming, to, you know, which goes to the point of, I'm not sure they know what could possibly come in Mueller's final report, because you know, it's unclear that the president has been forthcoming with even his lawyers about, you know, the extent to what Mueller could be reporting on.
Right, and instead they keep saying, well, we know that there was no collusion. We don't know that there was no collusion, right? I mean, Robert Mueller hasn't yet said there was, but he hasn't yet said there wasn't.
Correct.
Then there's also the whole area of obstruction of justice, which seems to me the president gives him more ammunition on that almost every day. And now, by dangling a pardon in front of Manafort or attacking Cohen for cooperating, either way, or praising Roger Stone for having the guts not to cooperate, one could raise the charge of witness tampering, which I don't know whether Mueller's looking at that, but
I texted Roger Stone as I was reporting this story, and I said, is it your understanding that the White House or the president have any sort of plan in place to respond to the Mueller report for whatever scenarios might be outlined? And he just said to me, no, they don't need one. Trump holds all the cards. And I think that's the mentality every staffer in the White House has at this point, that Trump will read the report and he will tweet, and that will be the strategy.
Would that be enough?
Depends on what he tweets, but I mean, I think.
But I mean, if you have an official Department of Justice report,
right? I mean, like
which,
that.
Maybe it doesn't accuse him of a crime, but I mean, is really negative, critical of the president and his team. Yeah. Respond with a tweet?
I think, well, I mean, to be gracious, it'll probably be a bit of a tweet thread, but and not just 240 characters. We've seen him, you know, really get into threading recently. But it probably won't be enough. The short answer is that it's not, I think, how most people would respond to a report from the Justice Department of this magnitude.
And you can bet that Jerry Nadler and Adam Schiff and some people in knowing that the new Democratic leadership in the House will make sure that
well,
the report gets a little more attention very quickly.
Now that we're post midterms, we're in legal territory now. This is not about just, you know, assuaging your base that everything is fine. It's about, you know, what are actually the legal challenges that come now, and tweets don't really address those.
Well, a big news day, and you're right in the heart of it here as it's happening on the Bill Press Show. Elaina Plott, great work. You're going to have a good run at the White House.
Thanks, Bill.
For The Atlantic. TheAtlantic.com, and, of course, with Eugene Scott. Always follow him at WashingtonPost.com or even WashPost.com.
Yeah.
That's it, folks. Have a great, great weekend. Come on back on Monday. We'll be looking for you.
Bill Press Show.